Hi guys, how you going? Campbell here from Autodidactic Channel. Hope you are all having a splendid day. And of course, autodidactic means to be self-educated. And in this world, we need to be self-educated because if we are not, the only choice we have left is to believe what other people are telling us. And clearly all this information of other people comes from a very small group of people who wish to control us. Those who wish to be rulers, those who wish to be in power. And it is becoming blatantly obvious this year with the veil lifting that these people who are in control and who are putting out this information and making these so-called rules are literally the dregs of society. They are subhuman. In fact, if you want to be truthful, they're not human at all, guys. And this is something else that is becoming apparently clear, is that all these so-called elites, and the word elite is E-L, as in the gods, their gods, and ites. Now, ites means it's to do with a people, people with customs from a certain place, like the Israelites. So they're not the elites. They think that they are the L-ites, the people of God. Question is, what God do they pray to? And what these so-called rulers are doing is they are shrinking our perception. They are retarding us. As we can see in the world, this world is not evolving, it's devolving. Everything was much better in the past. Everything worked in the past, and as far as we can tell, people were happier, everything was more abundant, and things were a lot more fair, and the world was built for humans, not for the few, but for the many. So what could they be hiding from us? What could be the ultimate thing? Because for a few years now we've been questioning the shape of this realm, and recently in the last couple of years we started to question the size of this realm. And that's really what I want to get into today, is what is this realm? Because the thing is, again, we have been given information to tell us exactly what this realm is. Look at the books. They'll tell you what the air is, what it's made of, all the different atmospheres up there, what's under the ground. There's a big ball of molten iron in the middle of the earth. How they know that, I don't know, because that would be impossible to know unless you'd been there. So all this information that we're given to build a picture in our mind of where we are is false. This is the veil. This is the show. This is the facade. This is the story they are acting out for us. And it's a false narrative. So let's get into the shape of the realm, and is there actually more land out there that we can access? Alrighty, let's get into it. Now, we all have heard about Admiral Byrd and his expeditions to the Arctic, and of course there's a very famous clip from the Longines chronoscope back in the 50s where Admiral Byrd says straight out, there is land, there is more land past the Antarctic. He says it is larger than North America. He also says it's full of minerals and resources. So he's not talking about a frozen tundra.
Admiral Byrd, you've been to both the North Pole and the South Pole. Is there any unexplored land left on this earth that might appeal to adventurous young Americans?
Yes, there is. and not up around the North Pole, because it's getting crowded up there now, because they find out it's really usable, not only to live in, but militarily. But strangely enough, there's left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being. And that's beyond the pole, on the other side of the South Pole.
So he told us straight out that there's land there, and he's one of the few people that have been there. Yet, that information is hidden, and if you say that to most people, they will laugh at you. But it's true. It's true. It's all there, guys. The evidence is all there. Now, this is someone that I've just discovered. His name was Sir George Hubert Wilkins, and this guy was an Australian. And again, I'm from Australia. I'm 7th generation Australian, so they say, and I've never heard about this guy. Never taught to me in school, never mentioned in, the social zeitgeist, never heard of him. So who is Sir George Hubert Wilkins? Well, he was born 1888, 1888, and died 1958. Lots of eights there. 8, of course, is the infinity number. War correspondent and photographer, polar explorer, naturalist, geographer, climatologist, and aviator. Born on the 31st of October 1888 at Mount Byron East, South Australia, the 13th child of Henry Wilkins, a farmer, and his wife Louisa Nee Smith. As a child, George experienced the devastation caused by drought and developed an interest in climatic phenomenon. Reared as a Methodist, he studied engineering part-time at South Australia's School of Mines and Industries, then pursued interests in photography, cinematography in Adelaide and Sydney. In 1908, he sailed for England to work for the Gaumont Film Company. As a newspaper reporter and cameraman, Wilkins visited different countries. He also learned to fly and experimented with aerial photography. As a war correspondent and photographer, in 1912 he covered the fighting between the Turks and Bulgarians. From 1913 to 1916, he was second in command on Valdemar Stephenson's Canadian Arctic expedition. Wilkins became adept in the art of survival in polar regions, added to his scientific knowledge, and conceived a plan to improve weather forecasting by establishing permanent stations at the pole. He returned to Australia May 1917 and was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Australian Imperial Force, Australian Flying Corps. So basically, we have this story, he grew up in Australia, was into photography and film. In here it says he caught a boat to England. And then with the Arctic, it's just talking about that he was there for meteorology and that he was trying to basically predict the weather better. So is that story true? This is the question. So if we come to this, now this last, I'll leave these links for you below as well. This one that we've just looked at, Australian Dictionary Biography, this is EDU, so this is from an Australian university. I'm not sure which one, ABD, I don't know what that is. And here we have sirhubert.com, so this is actually a website just about Sir Hubert, Sir Hubert Wilkins. It says, Sir Hubert Wilkins was born October 1888, Mount Byron, blah, blah, blah. It says his upbringing on the lonely farm at the edge of the Australian outback where he witnessed devastating drought. So again, they're going into the weather bit. At the bottom it says he then left for England to work as a newsreel cinematographer for Gaumont. Now we have heard that before. After moving to London in 1909, Wilkins worked as a Gaumont cinematographer covering many international events, including the Balkans War in 1912, but he still wanted to become a polar explorer. He was offered his first trip to the Arctic as a cinematographer with the Canadian Arctic Expedition of 1913, led by Viljama Stephenson. He walked thousands of miles over unexplored territory, learnt to live off the polar ice, and developed his revolutionary ideas for polar travel. In 1916, he returned to Point Barrow, Alaska, to learn the world had been at war for 2 years. So it's saying here that he went on this expedition and was out in the Arctic for 2 years. For 2 years. Where was he getting food? You can't carry 2 years of food with you on your back. Okay, so he was out there for 2 years. When he came back, he realised that he didn't even know there was a war. Okay, so this is all, I've looked at this story and it's not making sense. There's different versions and they don't add up. And here we have another website. This is southpole.com. Hubert Wilkins. It's got the same backstory. But then it says in 1908 he stowed away on a ship from which he later abandoned in Algiers. The next thing he knew, he found himself in a gang of criminals involved with gun running, kidnapping, drug dealing and spying. At 24, Wilkins was hired by the Gaumont Film Company to join the Turkish side of the Turco-Bulgarian War of 1912 and shoot footage of the war. So we've got two stories that say that he bought a ticket because he had a job in England as a cinematographer. He went and did that, then he went to the Arctic, came back and realised that the world was at war, and then he took off and started filming the war. This one says that he stowed away on a ship, got off in Algiers, and Algiers is in Africa. So yeah, not England, and then it says he was suddenly in the war. So completely two different stories. But this one still says that in 1913, he became second in command of the expedition to the Canadian Arctic. The Canadian Arctic, well there you go. He went on to learn how to fly, blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah, he basically went out and he came back saying that he found more land as well. So we have Admiral Byrd, and of course he was an admiral, so, we've got to think that these people were fairly trustworthy people. Unfortunately, they just spoke a bit of truth that wasn't supposed to be spoken. And yeah, Admiral Byrd says there's more land. He said that on film. And now we have Sir Hubert Wilkins saying the same thing. He's been to the Arctic. We know he's been there. And he said there is more land. So this is the thing, guys. The people who have been there are saying there's more land. The people who haven't been there, who write books and things, tell us there is no more land. We know, I actually did a video showing the South Pole, so-called, the Antarctic, and you can see what they've done, that they've actually folded their pictures in to make it a point at the South Pole. So many questions, guys. If you think that this realm is what they're telling us it is, I would suggest you do a little bit of research into the opposite viewpoint. So there is a problem with the maps. We know this. The maps change. The maps don't make sense. The maps go from circles to rectangles. The land has been changed. And there are big questions about where everything actually is. Because when you look into things like flights, aeroplane flight times and flight paths, there's a lot of anomalies. This whole half of the Earth that we have, that's supposed to be the Pacific Ocean. Planes don't fly across that. Planes also don't fly across the Antarctic or the Arctic. Why do we have the Arctic Treaty and the Antarctic Treaty, which basically every country in the world, at least every modernized country in the world, has signed on to, and you can't go there. If you wanted to go there, or I wanted to go to the North or South Pole, we can't. If we got a boat and an exposition, and we were completely funded and had everything we needed, we still could not go. They would not let us. Why is that? What was Operation High Jump? Why did Admiral Byrd go down to the Arctic, with all these boats and planes, and then we have stories of a battle against disc-shaped objects. This was at the South Pole. And then he retreated, lost quite a few bits of machinery. Then we have the story of Admiral Byrd at the North Pole flying in, and his plane gets taken over. And this is written in his diary, that he's taken down to a world that's underneath the surface and is highly technological. And this is the thing, guys. What are aliens? What are aliens? Why do they call them extraterrestrials? Terrestrial means land, from the land. Terra firma, terrestrial. Right? Extra land, that's what extraterrestrial means. Doesn't mean that they're from a different planet. It means they're from extra land. So they're telling us there's extra land, guys. Out there, past the North Pole, past the South Pole, there is extra land. We've had this confirmed by at least 2 people who have been there. Okay, they've believed it enough, they've just put it straight onto film, and one's written it in his diary. We also have, of course, many, stories, like we have the Smoky God, of people going up to the Arctic, seeing another sun, meeting giants, advanced civilizations. Of course, the 4 land masses up near the Arctic with Mount Mewe in the middle. And we're also told that there is a big whirlpool around Mount Mewe. And all the magnetics are a bit strange. So where is the South Pole and where is the North Pole? This is the thing, because if the North Pole is actually in the center with land masses around it, like we're shown on the traditional flat Earth map, then where's the extra land? Where does the extra land fit in? I mean, obviously the maps could be drawn differently. There could be, something the size of the US up there that could easily be put in and fit. But I think that we're talking about much more land than that. Now, many of you have seen this channel, and I can't pronounce the name. This guy talks a lot about crater Earth, and he's talking about the moon being a projection of the Earth, basically, and that the Earth is a much bigger plane, and that down here is a much bigger plane, and the Earth is only a small part that actually fits into one of the craters on the moon. So that's his theory. And I also found this. This is from the Library of Congress. This is image 22 of New York Journal, January 31, 1897. And if you see this picture, we have, it's not the best. Can we get a bigger one here? Not really. There we go. Okay, so this is a picture of the Earth. And what do we see around the outside here? But a wall of ice surrounding the flat world. There you go, 1897. If the Earth were flat, this is how the school maps would look. So they knew if it was flat, there'd have to be a big ice wall. And this is like the UN's flag, basically, isn't it? Without the 33 sections. So I found that interesting. 1897, printed in the New York Times. And this was sent to me by the guys at Truth Through Revelations. And this is called World Beyond the Poles, Physical Continuity of the Universe by F. Amadeo Giannini. Now, there's some fairly interesting titles. So what is this all about? So, this is a pretty grainy, this is actually a photo. So this is 65 miles up, the stratosphere photograph of a small part of the Earth's sky taken from a V2 rocket 65 miles up shows the globular illusion and photographic distortions as expressed by Giannini, part of the physics laboratory of Johns Hopkins University. So this is supposed to be a picture of the Earth. Okay, and this is the edge of the Earth. And you can see it's kind of Got our line up here. And I think what he's talking about is this. Now this concept, Giannini is saying that our problem is when we look at the sky, we always look at it through a lens that is normally convex, which means it's basically, it's like a bowl, isn't it? And what he's saying is that when we look at the stars and when we look out, because we look through curved lenses, it's actually getting the land from around us and pulling it up over in the vision to make it look like it's above us. Now, this could also be achieved if there was a dome, as in this is, and look into Project Fishbowl if you want to get an opinion on that side, because this is the thing. They were out there looking for something and they were shooting nukes up into the sky. Why was that? The following pages contain the first and only description of the realistic universe of land, water, oxygen and vegetation, where human and other forms of animal life abound. This is not a work of fiction, nor is it a technical analysis of anything. It is a simple recital of fact, which transcends the most elaborate fiction ever conceived. It is diametrically opposed to the assumptions and the mathematical conclusions of theorists and technicians throughout the ages. It is truth. These pages describe the physical land routes from the Earth to every land area of the universe about us, which is all land. Such routes extend from beyond the North Pole and South Pole, so-called ends of the Earth, as decreed by theory. It will here be adequately shown that there are no northern or southern limits to the Earth. It will thereby be shown where movement straight ahead from the pole points and on the same level as the Earth permits of movement into celestial land areas appearing up or out from the Earth. An original treatise basic to this book was written and has been expounded at American universities 1927 to 1930. Since then, the U.S. Naval Research Bureau and the U.S. Navy's exploratory forces have conclusively confirmed the work's principal features. Since December 12, 1928, U.S. Navy polar expeditions have determined the existence of indeterminable land extent beyond both pole points, out of bounds of the assumed isolated globe. Earth as postulated by the Copernican theory of 1543. But on January 13th, 1956, as this book was being prepared, a US Naval Air Unit penetrated to the extent of 2,300 miles beyond the assumed South Pole end of the Earth. That flight was always over land and water and ice. For very substantial reasons, the memorable flight received negligible press notice. The United States and more than 30 other nations prepared unprecedented polar expeditions for the 1957-58 year to penetrate land now proved to extend without limit beyond both pole points. My original disclosure of them unknown land beyond the poles in 1926-28 was captioned by the press as more daring than anything Jules Verne's ever conceived. Today, 30 years later, the United States, Russia, Argentina and other nations have bases on that realistic land extent which is beyond the Earth. It is not space as theory dictated. It is land and water of the same order that comprise known Earth territories. This work provides the first account of why it is unnecessary to attempt shooting up or out from the terrestrial level for journey to any of the astronomically named celestial land areas. It relates why such attempts would be futile. And of course, remember, this was written before they went to the moon, and if you want to look into the moon landing, check out the film A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon. These pages present incontrovertible evidence that the same atmospheric density of this Earth prevails throughout the entire universe. Such a feature proves that, except for the presence of a gaseous sky envelope and underlying oxygen content equivalent to that of the Earth, we could never observe the luminous celestial areas designated as stars or planets. It is shown here that in a determination of realistic cosmic values, the observed luminous areas of the universe about us represent celestial sky areas, and that they are as continuous and connected as all areas of this Earth's continuous and connected sky. Hence, it is shown that there are no globular or isolated bodies to be found throughout the whole universe. They are elements of lens deception. Accordingly, the absence of celestial bodies precludes any possibility of bodies circling or ellipsing in space. This work is radically and rightfully opposed to astronomical conclusions of all ages. It depicts the illusion developing from all telescopic observations and photographs of the universe about us. It clearly explains and vividly illustrates why those lens-developed illusions have been mistakenly accepted as facts. The book is therefore unparalleled in the long history of man's attempted interpretation and recording of the universe about us. It projects man's first understanding of the factual and endless universe, which contains human life throughout its vast length and width, regardless of all abstract theory to the contrary. The discovery of new worlds in matter as in mind is but the logical outcome of an infinite universe. And that's a very good point. If it's infinite, there's got to be infinite land, infinite peoples, infinite diversity. And here's just a few quotes from 1927, around that time. In August, if it is so, the world will know of it. That was William Cardinal, Archbishop of Boston. Giannini said, since words cannot confirm you, words cannot deny you. It is your work and only your work to give it. Only dreams are true. The tangible and real on which our lives are based was yesterday's ideal, a rosy picture traced by some quaint visionary, impractical, half-cracked, painting his fancies eerie, and now it's solid fact. Whatever we hold stable, dependable and sane, was once a hopeful fable of castles built in Spain. Before the fact the fancy, before the deed the dream, that builds by necromancy the hard material scheme. So all your towers that shimmer, your lamps that light the sky, were once a tiny glimmer within some seer's eye. Time makes our empires scatter, but we shall build anew, for only visions matter, and only dreams are true. By Burton Braley.